I think we can slowly start. If some participants will join a few minutes later, that's no problem. But I think it's a good moment to kick off this today's webinar. A warm welcome to everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, depending from where you are joining us from. For the beginning, this webinar is being recorded and will be published on our website afterwards. However, only the slides and audio will be shared. Neither the chat nor the video recording will be included. You might have seen already a pop-up window when you joined the session. It's my pleasure to welcome you to this webinar introducing the HFC Emission Baseline Tool for enhanced NDC reporting. Together, we will illustrate why it is crucial for countries to enhance their nationally determined contributions with accurate HFC baselines to allow for emissions accounting and reporting. My name is Stizam Pfeiffer. I'm an advisor for GIZ Pro Klima and the C42 project. And today I have the pleasure of being your facilitator and to guide you through this event. Let me start with a brief introduction to today's event. It's part of the C42 project and the NDC4 webinar series, which addresses policymakers and highlights the crucial role of the cooling sector in driving more ambitious and enhanced NDCs, while also promoting comprehensive mitigation approaches. And before we begin, let me share some important technical details. Please keep your microphone muted during the session. And if you have any questions, feel free to type them in the chat. We will address them during the Q&A session after the presentation. I'm joined today by my colleague Milan Disanayake, who will assist with any technical issues. If you need help or have individual questions, please reach out to him. You can find his email address in the chat. So let's test the chat to make sure everything is working and also to get to know each other a little better. I have a quick question for you. From which country are you joining from? Please type your answer in the chat to get an idea of the participants and where you're joining from. Amr is joining from Dubai. Good to have you. Any more? Teresa from Germany. From Germany. Good to have you. Okay, yeah, feel free to still answer in the chat. I will move on. From Bhutan. Good to have you. Kinley. Okay, yeah, good to have people joining from various parts of the world. Let's take a look at today's agenda. We will start with opening remarks from Maria Teresa, who is communication manager from the C42 project. After that, Ahmed Salim from Cool Coalition will present the NDC Cooling Guide, practical insights from NDC integration. And then Irene Papst from Heat will introduce the HFC Emission Baseline Tool. And finally, there's a Q&A session where we will address any questions and comments from your side. And with this, let me give the floor already to Teresa, Communication Manager from C42, who will give some welcome remarks. Teresa, will you? You don't need a slide, a presentation slide, or will you take over the presentation?
No, I don't have a slide, but you can keep it so you don't have to switch on and off again the presentation. Okay, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm delighted to also welcome you to today's event. It's our 11th NDC4 webinar already, and I'm very happy that you have joined it. As Tizian already mentioned, I'm communication manager of the C42 project, and it is my pleasure to introduce the project very briefly. C42 is a global project implemented by the GIZ to foster sustainable development in the refrigeration and air conditioning sector, the RAC sector. Our overall objective is to work towards more policy coherence between Paris Agreement and the Montreal Protocol. And therefore, C42 especially works to support partner countries, but also other countries in implementing more ambitious NDCs in the RAC sector, because there is enormous greenhouse gas reduction potential, and we want to unlock this. With the aim of sharing knowledge and tools and methodologies that we have developed, C42 hosts this NDC4 webinar series, which today's event is part of. In this NDC4 series, we shine light on the importance and potential of the cooling sector for more ambitious and enhanced NDCs. And as I already said, we share our knowledge and practical insights that we have gained. One of the NDC tools that we are developing are our hands-on mini modules, so-called mini modules, and today's event will introduce the second mini module, our HFC Emission Baseline Tool. And the tool is helpful for countries to enhance their NDCs with accurate HFC baselines and to enable emissions accounting and reporting. The webinar will also offer practical insights from the NDC Cooling Guide by the Cool Coalition. We're very happy that you joined our session today, and we will learn about the NDC Cooling Guide as well. So I think that's it from my side. Thank you for joining us today, and we hope the webinar will provide valuable knowledge and tools to drive impactful climate action in the cooling sector. Thank you. Over to you, Tizian.
Great. Thank you, Teresa. Yeah, with this, I think we are already coming to our first speaker of today. I'm pleased to introduce Amer Salim, who will share practical insights on the NDC Cooling Guide, practical insights from NDC integration. Amer is a mechanical engineer, energy engineer, studied in Cairo, Egypt, and Munich. Also sustainable resource management. Amer Salim is the lead for country engagement and climate policy at UNEP Cool Coalition. With over 14 years of experience, he has worked for several international organizations, including UNFCCC, the Climate Champions Team, IRENA, Aldi Süd, German Embassy in Cairo, and the American University in Cairo. He has developed expertise in a wide range of areas, including climate and energy policies, climate technologies, decarbonization, and digitalization. So we are very happy that Emmett is joining today. And with this, I give the floor to you. If you like, you can take over the presentation. Thank you, Emmett. I will stop sharing.
Thank you very much, Tizian, for the introduction. I really appreciate the invitation to be with you today, and also especially being with all of the wonderful colleagues today, especially Irene. She has been, like later I will explain why actually, but she has been an integral person of this NDC cooling guide. So allow me to share my screen, and then we can just jump into the details. Sorry.
Looks good. Perfect.
So this, like for those who are not aware of what's the UNEP and Cool Coalition, allow me just to briefly cover this part. Cool Coalition, it's a global multi-stakeholders platform, is hosted by UNEP, United Nations Environment Program. It has been established in 2019, and it includes around more than 250 stakeholders on cooling, including even the GIZ. Allow me to quickly to cover also this part, the Global Cooling Pledge, and then I will go back to the first slide. The Global Cooling Pledge, it's an initiative or like some sort of commitments. They are exactly 14 policy commitments. They have been created in the COP28 in Dubai. And these commitments have been signed by 72 countries who came together to commit to an array of responsibilities and commitments, which mostly about decreasing the percentage of the global cooling related emissions by 68% by 2050. One of these commitments, as you see here, which was to commit to integrate the first one to publishing National Cooling Action Plan, which is so-called NCAP, and also reflect those cooling measures into the NDCs by 2026. Because you know that there might be even like this year, it's the submission of the NDCs 3.0 or the third version of the NDCs, and it might extend even until next year until most of the countries submit their third version. Having said that, those like around 10 partners came together: Sustainable Energy for All, C for All, United for Efficiency, GIZ, UNDP, Climate Clean Air Coalition, CLAS, Clean Cooling Cooperative, and also HEAT International, where actually Irene is working. And by the way, Irene is the lead author of this NDC Cooling Guide. They came together to develop this guide, and it has been a comprehensive efforts of all of these members. Why actually this guide is quite important, I will explain just later, but why it's unique from any other guide that is available, because it covers both like through step by step on how to integrate cooling into the mitigation part and also into the adaptation part. So it's 6 steps, and importantly, it helps countries to provide the MRV part on how to track the implementation. You know, there's always a difference between formulating the NDC and meanwhile towards the implementation. So that's one of the important elements on how to track the implementation of the NDCs. Irene, I will not really go through all the details for the HFC baseline. I will leave it for you, but I will allow me to quickly to touch base on the mitigation part and cover the adaptation part, bearing in mind the time limitation. So I'll just explain the importance of cooling, and I believe most of you are aware, but I will cover it quickly. And then also the structure of the cooling guide. I will highlight quickly the 6 steps of mitigation and both for adaptation. And by the way, for those who are from the governments, I encourage you to go to the Global Cooling Pledge on the UNEP webpage or Cool Coalition and see if your country already committed to the pledge or not. Because if you have been committed, we can support you on integrating cooling into your country. So please feel free to reach out to us, and I'm happy, or even leave a comment here, and I'm happy even to take a note of that and have another call later on. So allow me to tell you why actually it's important to integrate cooling. As you know, cooling represents 7% of the global greenhouse gas emissions, projected to potentially double they are going to double almost to up to 14 or 15% by 2050. So that is alarming. We have to take really an action on that. And as you know, in the summer times, not in Germany to be honest, but in many other areas in the summer, the consumption of electricity is around 20% of total electricity. If you have been living into North African countries or the Middle East, you are really aware that you cannot live starting from May until October without an air condition. providing the thermal comfort, it's a must. This is also nevertheless to mention the cooling into storing the food, transporting the food, etc. So it consumes the ventilators or fans and ACs, air conditions. They consume more than 20%, and it's projected to even increase by time. So cooling became really a necessity. It's not a luxury. And then, of course, as you know, it has a double burden. On one hand, it consumes electricity. This is like the indirect emissions, but also it has a direct emissions through the refrigerants. Like, as you know, cooling, especially for fridge or air conditions, they always consume and use the refrigerants. And I will leave this for Irene to cover very well on the HFCs, etc. But it's always the dilemma, the viscous cycle. The more the heat is increasing, the more we use air conditions, and then more use of air conditions, again, it adds up to more heat and increase of the temperature. So it's always a viscous cycle, and there's a need, an urgent need to balance this between the emission increase on one hand, on the other hand, to maintain the cooling demand that it's always projecting to increase. That's why, through this guide, and there's a pressing need to use or to apply best practices on how to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions by 60% compared to the business as usual. And this could be through an array of solutions like the HFC phase down as per Kigali Amendment, applying passive cooling solutions. It really doesn't require a lot of efforts, but design and urban planning, design, etc. And also, as you are aware of the energy efficiency improvements, and importantly, the grid decarbonization at the end of the day. You know, like it's the same dilemma even for electric cars. You know, when the more you move for electric cars without decarbonization, the grid itself, it doesn't really help you. One of the steps that it's quite important, maybe you still remember from one of the first commitments into the pledge, is to have an NCAP. So the guide is basically started to be built on whether you have an NCAP or not. If you have an NCAP, National Cooling Action Plan, it will help you a lot. But still, we also consider that if the country doesn't have a National Cooling Action Plan yet, still you can apply those steps that I'm going to share with you quickly. So what if you have an NCAP? The NCAP, it will help you really to provide a strong will across other countries. Among other countries, you will demonstrate your leadership as a country. It will help you also to have the data that you need for the setting the baseline. And of course, also it will help you to establish linkages with other agencies, because the first step of creating an NCAP is to start an interministerial committee among all of the ministries. Unfortunately, we don't have a ministry for cooling. So when you are about to start drafting and formulating the NCAP, you have to have a committee, and this committee is built across all of the ministries: Ministry of Energy, Ministry of Environment, Ministry of Trade and Industry, etc., etc. And of course, it helps you to also set action targets and importantly, to take an integrative approach on what we mentioned: the energy efficiency, passive cooling, and HFC phase down. This is, by the way, we call it the triple strategy. All of this also, the NCAP itself, similar to the guide that we have a global methodology on NCAP. I encourage you also to read about this, and feel free to reach out to us to support you on developing the NCAP if you are a government of a country. This structure, and thanks for Irene and all of the efforts, even GIZ, for being part of this guide. It's going to be published, by the way, in 1 week. We are at the last step of the production of the publication. It's to provide guidance for policymakers. This is the first part. Second part is methodology. It's a 6-step clear guidelines on how to integrate cooling into the mitigation part, as equal as for the adaptation part. And then some countries' examples. We went through consultations with, I would say, 9 countries to really listen to them, have their journey, how they made it, and even if they haven't been successful, how they want to enhance this process. And then, of course, the last important, how to finance this. After we developed and integrated these cooling measures, at the end of the day, every country wants to implement this and to invest and to provide the investment case for them. But this is going to be a part 2, and right now we are also working with other colleagues at Heat International to develop this together also with the World Bank. So just quickly on the first part, guidance for policymaker. Let's say someone is seated at the Ministry of Environment and they heard about, cooling is important to integrate. Many countries, by the way, in the second version of the NDC, and thanks for the GIZ colleagues, they started to consider HFCs, but not really fall to the full potential. So we have here had a set of questions, and you ask if yes or if no. Does it have a specific, for example, focal point? Does you have a ministry? Most of the questions, by the way, if you really, it could be addressed in the number 5, if you have an NCAP or not. If you really have an NCAP, it will facilitate entirely the procedures and process. And then the second part is, as you see, one of the importance of this methodology is based on the Kigali and the NCAP and also the pledge. And that's how you are going to integrate the HFC reporting into the economy-wide document of the NDC, especially when you start to define the national targets. If every country has already committed to the Kigali or not, and which line exactly they follow, similar to the NCAP, and also as well, if they committed to the pledge, it will help immediately the process according to the Paris Agreement. Just quickly on the 6-step guidance, and I'm not going to details. I will leave it to Irene, and also I will leave to the countries to read, and feel free to reach out. The 6th step is through 3 different stages, and every stage has 2 different steps. Stage 1 is the baseline definition in alignment with the NDC, and that means you take stock of available data. Some countries, even by the way, in the step 1, they struggle. They don't have the a profound amount of data that's required, and then they start defining the baseline. After that, they start to analyze the options of what they have based on what we just mentioned, the CAP or the NCAP, according to the NDC, and then they start to select what kind of measures they need to follow and what kind of targets that they need to include into the NDC. This is mostly for mitigation part. Here we are talking about the mitigation. And then they define the indicators. You remember this part, what makes this guide is unique is to how to integrate an MRV monitoring and validation within the NDC framework. And the 6th part is to analyze the progress, especially when you are going to submit the NDC 4.0 later on. I will keep the mitigation part for Irene. Quickly, I wanted to show you how the adaptation, because it's quite important. Not many current publications really cover the adaptation. The heat stress, the energy access, the poverty exposure. So we follow the same pattern here. This is the stage 1, as you see from the graph. We take stock of available data and define the baseline. But this is for the adaptation case. Heat stress, energy, and poverty exposure. You know how many people are exposed to high level of temperatures. Also, some countries, especially in different regions, they really suffer from rural areas and non-electrification. Also, access to reliable, sustainable energy. And what's also the poverty line? You know, some countries, they provide incentives to purchase fans, etc. All of these indicators, they have to be included into the NDC in order to really attract investment. If you build the case within the adaptation component, you can enhance access to finance also from the adaptation part, especially on cooling. And this is like stage 2. So really the guide provides you step by step, analyze options as we do for mitigation, selecting measures, etc. And the 3rd one is how to define indicators. That, if you remember, Irene, that was really one of the uneasy parts. We started to work out into this, and with the help of colleagues of other partners like C4All, we started to define what kind of indicators we need to integrate. Here, there are 3 main ones: the human comfort or thermal comfort and safety, and also for food, nutrition, and agriculture. And the 3rd is health services. So the primary indicators, they are range. I don't want to take really so much time and hand over to my colleague Irene, but if you are a country and representing a government, please feel free to reach out to us. We can provide you with this support package, and this publication will be published by end of this month at the Cool Coalition website. This is our support package. we are going to help you compile the cooling data and also assess the options and follow with you. Perhaps also we can, based on the case by case, we can pair a local or international expert to support really the coordination efforts and meanwhile provide technical assistance. Feel free to reach out to myself or my colleague Manjit, and we are happy to do so. Thanks very much for listening, and I'm open ready to hear from you. Over to you, Tetian.
Great. Thank you very much, Emil. This was a very interesting input. We will gather all the questions for the Q&A session at the end. So feel free to post your question in the chat or wait until later to raise your question yourself. And now that we have explored the NDC Cooling Guide, let's move to our next presentation, the introduction to the HFC Emission Baseline Tool. It's my pleasure to introduce Irene Papst. Irene is Senior Advisor and Business Area Coordinator for Climate Affairs at HEAT GmbH, based in Germany over the last 16 years. She has advised numerous countries on HFC and RUC sector inventories, mitigation actions, and NDC integration. She has developed methodologies for RUC sector inventories, as well as for estimating ODS and HFC banks on national and global scale. And we're also very happy that you're here, Irene, to introduce the HFC baseline tool. And with this, I give over to you. The floor is yours. Feel free to share your presentation. Thank you.
Yeah, good morning, good afternoon to everyone. Thank you, Titian, for the introduction. Thank you, Amr, for highlighting my share of the cooling guide. I will not cover the whole mitigation section here. There are other fora that will do or has done this. This session here is specifically focusing on the baseline part, because we felt that there is still kind of insecurity, unease to really link the HFC emissions with the Paris Agreement, although the HFC consumption is more or less known in many countries now, following the Article 7 reporting to the Montreal Protocol. I also acknowledge that there are still some insecurities and some doubts, especially because of the pandemic effects, how representative those are, but still many countries have a data set and I advocate to use it, and all data can be corrected and improved later on. But I think we need to start with what we have, and I encourage all countries to start somewhere. And for this, we want to share a little tool that we hope that will help this process. So I'll short provide an aim and the data requirements, and then show you the results of that tool before I hope that the computer works and everything, that I can show you a live demonstration on what data you would need to insert where and what insights you could gather from that. So, of course, as all of my previous speakers said already, we want to support the NDC integration and climate action within the cooling sector. I think all in the call here are aware that this is a hot topic and needs even more attention. We want to provide a practical methodology to establish an HFC emission baseline based on consumption data, based on the Article 7 reporting, so no need for any new data collection at this point, to then enable the HFC inclusion of the HFC emissions into the nationally determined contributions. Including HFC emissions into the national greenhouse gas inventory obviously also closes one gap, and to really have a complete representation of national emissions in the greenhouse gas accounting of the country. By this also, we hope to enhance the visibility and the completeness also of the emission reporting, also support evidence-based policy making by having some numbers to be that can be related to, also to identify implementation gaps if there are any, and also demonstrate the climate impact of the Kigali Amendment compliance. So what is actually the emission outcome by the consumption reduction, and to connect the Montreal Protocol actions to a wider climate goal. So how did we do that? We didn't invent the wheel anew. We are based on IPCC methodology. we're using the tier 1 method, meaning we base it on consumption data of HFCs as they are reported to the Ozone Secretariat. We also provide a projection method for estimating the reductions of the Kigali amendment schedule. Everything is in CO2 equivalents. What we don't do is to differentiate any specific measures or phase down of an individual refrigerant. So it's on purpose taken very broad, very top down to have it as simple as possible. Of course, it's not the most accurate estimate, but I think it's very reasonable to start with this and to have a good idea on what the Kigali amendment reduction could lead to in terms of emissions. If there is any more detailed data and if there is more detailed Kigali implementation plan data available, of course, that can always be done in a more disaggregated way. This anyway cannot be provided in one tool that claims to fit all. That needs to be done on an individual case. I think that's also clear. So this is a very first step for an overall estimate that I think is reasonably accurate to be also included into an NDC, provided that the baseline and the assumptions are also shared. I just want to add here also one caution. As many countries have the HFC consumption in very large proportion in the refrigeration air conditioning sector, this is where we focus. We claim or we assume that all HFCs are going into this sector. If there is larger other uses, then this tool can only be applied to the part that goes into the refrigeration air conditioning sector. If there's only very little, so to say, side consumption, I think all can be included into one. So I always said, you don't need much data. I just want to explain which one you really need. So HFC consumption in CO2 equivalents aggregated for all substances. So this is actually the sum of what you report to the Ozone Secretariat. So per year, of course, the consumption of all HFCs summed up in CO2 equivalents. So tons multiplied by the global warming potential. Also needed is the HFC baseline as it's defined under the Kigali Amendment. So it's the consumption of HFCs between 2020 and 2022, plus the share of the HCFC baseline. I think all in the call are aware of this, and I don't need to go there in detail. If you have any questions, put them in the chat. I'm happy to explain further, but I don't want to bore anyone who knows that already by heart. Of course, you need to know in which country group you are. So Article 5, there's two groups of countries, one starting the freeze and then the phase down in 2024. This is most of the countries. And group 2 has a 4 years leeway with also a different baseline. That's just because the schedule is, of course, preset in the tool. So in order to take the right one, it needs to be ticked. And then it's good to know the ratification year of the Kigali Amendment. This is to provide an indication if HFC reduction could be seen as part of the baseline or as part of the mitigation. This is just an initial indication from our side. Of course, it's always a national decision where to put those emissions, but just following strictly an understanding on baseline and mitigation approach. We provide an indication where we would put it. This is, of course, not our decision. This is a national decision. So in terms of the NDC target, what you need is and to check if HFCs are actually part of the NDC. Because if they are not part of the NDC, obviously they cannot be reported. And we would encourage you to reach out to have HFCs included. To also check what is the type of your national NDC target. Is it a single year or a multi-year target? Does your country operate with a baseline year or a baseline scenario? What is the target year? Currently, it's most probably 2030. And also if there is a policy cutoff date for the business as usual scenario, if this is relevant. So this is the very main, very minimum data that you need and information that you need. The green box here on the side provides some optional input possibilities. So some Kigali implementation plans opted for a more ambitious phase-down scenario than the Kigali amendment schedule prescribing. So that could also be included. For the growth projection for the future of HFC consumption growth, we have a 3% or 4% default that, of course, can be overwritten. Then we use the default variables from IPCC for national equipment lifetime, which is 10 years, and national emission factor from installed base, which is 15 years. That can also be overwritten if you have proof of other data. And we also have the possibility to add percentage of refrigerant destroyed or recovered or reclaimed to be added to the consumption of new gas that is reported to the ozone secretariat, as that, of course, changes your emissions. So in terms of graphs, what you see as a result, this is what the tool presents then in consumption, in emissions, and in banks. So we also always have the comparison between a business as usual scenario that does not include the Kigali amendment based on a 4% growth scenario. And also then the schedule. So you see here the consumption schedule, the reduction by the Kigali amendment, and then you see that translated in what that means in terms of emissions and what that means in terms of also HFC banks, always in megatons CO2 equivalents. And in written form and text form, you also have some results. So the result section also repeats what you inserted in terms of the target. So in this case, it's a single year target. The target year is 2030. And then there is the difference between the Kigali amendment and the business usual scenario. In the year 2030, that really depends on if you have a multi-year target, and it would be the cumulated emission reduction. But if it's a one target year, then we saw it fit that the 1 year or the mitigation in this year is the one more relevant. In case you need any other accumulated data, we also provided here as a table. So the difference between the two scenarios accumulated until different time horizons. So you have your thing. Of course, the data is dummy data. I mean, this is no country, no real country in the background. So now I would like to switch to a live presentation. And if it works, I can just move the presentation down and you stay on the right screen. I think that worked. I still have my bar here, and I would make it a little bigger for you, I think. Is that a size that is readable?
Looks good. Thank you.
Okay, great. So this would be the landing page, or this is the landing page of the tool. It, of course, repeats what I just said in terms of the aim and provides a little introduction. I think that is all clear. Then it then has here step-by-step instructions. Most important, on the yellow cells can be or should be changed. At the moment, there is no protection on that, because I also think it's valuable that anyone who wants can follow all the calculations. If you're not sure anymore, if you changed something that you didn't want to change, just download a new version, and then you're sure everything is still pristine and the way as it's supposed to be. But yeah, I'm for full transparency and happy you see all the calculations. Maybe if you look closely, you might recognize the IPCC format that was there in the file from 2015. Of course, there is no logos anymore since it's a further on development without IPCC input. But we just also wanted to make clear that, of course, this is the original. But the original file only was until 2015, so we extended it to 2050. So a long time frame. So most important here is then what you can insert. It repeats here the steps from the previous instruction slide. And you will also find it already familiar from what I said before. So as you see the yellow boxes here, and I think this is still not so nice and readable here, so this would be better. So first include or say yes or no if HFCs are included. That only has the implication that here this line here would change to an encouragement to reach out to include HFCs, but you could still use the whole functionality. But still, in terms of the methodology of the NDC, I think this is really important to be there. So then you have the NDC type here, and you see here, if I would change here to no, that would go gray, and if I set here to yes, then it would change here to yes. So depending if you have a single year target or multi-year target, this would change. I'll stay with a single year target for now, assuming the baseline year is 2020, the target year is 2030. I think that's a common set of data. Then we have the ratification year of the Kigali Amendment. I assume 2021. So it would fall after the baseline year, and there would be no alert in case of if it's still outside. You might still need to think if it can be included in the mitigation scenario. Then I already inserted here a generic baseline. You can tell from the numbers it's highly generic, but I think for the purpose that's good. Then you can see here or change here country group 1 or 2. So yes or no, depending on what, if you put that to a no, then it would also turn gray and the other one would turn yes. So I think that's rather clear. If you would change here to a reduction schedule that is more ambitious than the Kigali Amendment, you would get this line here to insert numbers here as the fashion from above. And then here to insert the total HFC consumption in tons CO2. So based on what you would report to the Ozone Secretariat. If you have less data than here available, there is an automatic interpolation on the next sheet. So if you only have 2 or 3 years, I think you should have 2020 until 2022, the least, as the baseline years. But that would interpolate automatically. And here you could enter some growth scenario. We put 3 and 4% as a default. So 4% would be taken as the applying growth factor for the HFCs. If you have a reason to change that, please do so. For the back interpolation, because we start our model in 2010, we assume a high growth of HFCs, since this is also the years when there was a lot of introduction of HFCs, where there was already the first move away from HCFCs to HFCs. So this is usually seen that there is a high growth. It can be changed, of course, but this is, in our view, a reasonable number. So this is what you can enter here. Then we have here the results page, which is still a bit small here, and you recognize already that table here with the numbers, and here also that accumulated difference table here. And you can see here that you can also change here the tier 1 default that IPCC provides in terms of overall equipment lifetime and emission factor. And what you have below here is then that box here where you see HFC's consumption as reported. So this is directly what comes from the previous slide. And then here is the back projection provided using this 40% going back. And then we have that forward projection here that starts immediately after when there is no data, using the other growth factor. And then for transparency, just one line of summing up all those three to really show what the business as usual HFC consumption is that the tool works with. Then we have further down, we have that greenish part here that then calculates the Kigali Amendment consumption and a bank and emission from there. And you have then this red bar here, or the reddish area, when there is the same calculation done for the business as usual. And you see the graphs here that compares both. So for that greenish area, of course, then the schedule is applied here as the Kigali Amendment schedule here. If you would have a more ambitious scenario, that would also add up here, or end up here and be applied here. Then this is the resulting consumption. And then this is the method that IPCC follows, calculating the agent that is in retired equipment that could be destroyed or recovered and then ultimately released. Calculating then the bank, so everything of HFCs that is contained in equipment that is in use, and the emissions from there, calculates the servicing demand, and then the what is available for new equipment. So servicing comes first, and then what goes into new equipment. What we added here in the back that is not strictly IPCC, but very similar, is that you could add destruction percentages of refrigerants that are recovered per year. So IPCC has one value for all years, but I think this is not really workable so easily. So if your Kigali implementation plan or some other ODS banks management plans further on foresees some destruction, you could enter that here. Default, of course, there is no destruction and there is no recovery. And what also is here a possibility to add how much reclaimed refrigerant is actually added again to the market, because there is this is not strictly, or it's not part of the reported consumption that is in the Montreal Protocol, but of course it has an effect on emissions if recovered refrigerant is reclaimed and then put back on the market. So as it's yellow, that can be changed. It has the most conservative values as a default, meaning no destruction, no recovery, no reclaim is happening. So this is what it is. If you would change here on the target years here, on the NDC targets here, change it to a multi-year target, then you would also see here that this is here multi-year target, and this is also here then the emission reduction in the period, so that would change automatically. And yeah, I think I need to stop here to allow a few questions. Otherwise, yeah, I could have shown different effects of different inputs, but I think that can also be tried out by everyone themselves. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Irene. This was very interesting also to see the tool itself and how it can be used. I will share my presentation again for the next slide. Second. Oh. Okay, coming to the questions and answers, and maybe also sharing this before, feel free to scan this code also to find the publication of the HFC Emission Baseline Tool on our website. I'll give you a second to scan the code, but we will also publish the link in the chat. And with this, we would come to our Q&A session. Now that we have heard both very interesting and informative presentations, we would open the floor to your questions. If you have any questions, feel free to post them in the chat, or also raise your hand to ask Amr or Irene directly. Are there any questions at this moment?
Lucrecia Lopez has a question for Mozambique.
Okay, yeah.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm sorry, it's not Lucrecia, Mr. Leonardo Solilan from Mozambique. Thank you very much for the boss presentation, starting for the guide of cooling and the last, Madam, very interesting presentation. But allow me to say that Mozambique is a little bit late in terms of some projects. So we like to know how we can assess this guide for our team in Mozambique. I saw very interesting items, paragraph to be learned by our staff in National Zone Unity. And the second question is, could you describe a little bit about the guidance for policymakers? I was surprised with that. What I know is the guidance as all, but not for the policymaker. When we started the policymaker, we are taking the key issues, all the problems. When we include the policymakers, we'll get good results, because when the things come top to down, it's very easy to implement in the country. That's why we have problems in some countries to implement the Montreal Protocol, because the issue is dealing just in the base. The policymakers are not part of the process. So if you can tell us just a little bit in a few words, what do you mean when you say guidance for the policymakers? The last madam was talking about the destruction of refrigerant. In Mozambique, we don't have equipment in terms of how to do the destruction of the refrigerant. And we still not deal with the cooling plan. GIZ could assist us, please, to introduce in Mozambique the cooling plan as well, the destruction of our refrigerants. Thank you very much for the floor.
Irene or Emil, would you like to respond?
Yeah. Irene, should I respond first? Or?
Go ahead.
Okay, thanks. So thank you very much, sir, for your question. I truly appreciate it. First of all, we are really more than happy to support Mozambique on integrating cooling into your NDC. But I believe you are not a signatory yet to the Global Cooling Pledge. So I highly encourage you and urge you, we can have a consultation call to pursue and convince your policymakers to sign the pledge and to sign to the commitments, so we can work together on this, not only the NDC, on the NCAP and other more benefits. So yeah, please, I will send my email in the chat, and feel free to email me or send your email, and then we can have another call on signing the pledge so we can activate this. To the question on this part, that part was very important at the beginning, because as you said, and I echo you, I second your opinion, that everything, it happens with the convincing the policymakers. That's why the reason behind the first part of the guidelines is to pursue and develop the convincing case for the policymakers, why it's important to include cooling into the NDCs, and how actually, that was the first part. And when it was built at the beginning, it was not only built on just decrease emissions, reduce everything. It was also to include how to build the resilience for countries against the extreme heat. I believe right now everyone is impacted and felt by the extreme heat. So that's how. And kindly, the Irene and her colleagues as well, Claudia, I remember specifically, she came up with this list of questions. We call it the decision tree. It makes the argumentative case how to end up that I really decide on how to and why, and to include cooling into the NDCs. So this is how we built this case to pursue the policymakers to decide why it's very important. That was the purpose of it. So if you send me your email, I'm happy really to share with you also the publication once it's published in almost a week exactly. It's right now with the graphic designers, etc. I hope I addressed your questions. Irene, I will have a question to you later after the colleagues, but it's a really nice presentation. I enjoyed it very much. Thank you. Over to you.
Sure.
Irene, would you also like to respond, or should I go?
I think the second part was more directed to GIZ than to me.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, we're definitely always interested in supporting countries in developing their NDCs, integration of RUC into the NDCs. I also have a slide for closing also with our contact details, so feel free to reach out to us, definitely. Is there any need, Lucrecia, to to come back to this, or otherwise I would give the floor to Matetala, who also raised the hand. Okay, Matetala, then feel free to comment or question.
Yes. I was just unmuting myself. Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, we are still okay. My question was only, okay, first of all, we are also more interested on the cooling plan and together with strategy. But in our NDC, we included the issues of HFCs, but the major issues which were included there was the issue of the trainings and other things. We didn't specify the issue of a cooling plan. So is it possible that if the point is not included in the under NDC, but we still want to implement the cooling plan, is it possible that we can be assisted in that case? The other issue is that I was checking the presentation on Excel scenarios, which was very much interesting. Whether we are allowed to access it or we are just for presentation. So thank you very much.
Yeah, feel free to respond. Maybe the first part of the question was to you, Emmet, also regarding the cooling pledge, and then Irene for the tool.
I'm sorry, I really had internet connection for disconnect. I didn't fully hear the question. It was about how to join the pledge, if I understand correctly, right? I really suffered a bit.
How to join the pledge and how to get support for the NCAP mostly.
For the NCAP, okay, sure. So how to join the pledge? It's I invite you for another call where we can present the Global Cooling Pledge and its commitments. I will show you right now the link also for the Global Cooling Pledge commitments. How to join is by signing a note verbal from your country to the pledge and addressing this right now to the co-chairs of the pledge, which is the co-chairs are the country of Brazil and the country of the United Arab Emirates. And also addressing to our executive director, Inger Anderson, at the UNEP. And by committing to these pledges, we activate our support packages. One of the commitments to help you is to develop the NCAP. So this is like the web page. I'm sharing it right now in the chat box about the Global Cooling Pledge and its commitments. And definitely once you send the note verbal, we are more than happy to, of course, have a consultation call, assess your needs and gaps that you have at your country on how to, and have an understanding on how to help your country to implement the commitments of the pledge. We have been doing this, and by the way, if you can really sign, I would say as soon as you could, or at least send an interest. We are happy to include your country in the next first focal point meeting in Bonn this June, and on the 13th and 14th, where we will have 2-day meeting together with 72 other countries. I hope I addressed your questions, and please feel free just to drop your email or email me. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And for the tool, that was not only for presentation purpose, the link that Tizian shared with the QR code that leads you to a PDF that again explains, and also to the Excel version for you to download and work with it. And as I said, it's not protected at all. So in case you are not sure anymore, if you changed something that you didn't want to change, just download a new version and you're sure it's again the way it was meant.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Are there any more questions? Otherwise, I'm aware we're a little bit over our time. But if there is a last question.
I have a quick comment to Irene, if I may, Tizian. So the tool is really great. I think it's a very complementing with the guide, because the first question you included or not. So I think we can have another discussion on really how to complement it. So right now I really get the comments from our Jazzing colleagues in the past, from Claudia when she mentioned like about the tool, etc. So thanks very much. Really,
And Amma, if you can, now there's a link, so that could be now still included in the guide, if that's still possible.
I will do so.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's very important to coordinate, to really use all the synergies between the different publications and activities of our organizations. Perfect. Okay, as far as I see, there is no question at this moment. So thank you very much for your questions and answers. So I've only left to mention our NDC help desk. Feel free to visit the help desk on our website, Green Cooling website. You can find the link in the chat. You will find there a lot of resources, expert guidance in the field of green cooling for policymakers, for designing and implementing nationally determined contributions in the cooling sector. There's also a contact form for the colleagues also in Mozambique. Feel free to reach out to us through the contact form. There's also a range of frequently asked questions. Maybe you can find your answer to your question also there. Otherwise, feel free to contact us, and also feel free to browse through our publication, the NDC guideline, which is available in English and Spanish. And with this, I thank you for the participation in the name of GIZ Pro Klima. Thank you to the participants, and thank you very much, Irene and Amel, for being here today and for presenting on your topics. We hope to keep in touch. We have the next NDC4 webinar on 13th of May. We will share all the information and link with you soon. And with this, again, thank you. Take care and goodbye. Have a very good day and afternoon, and see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.